So, some quick little things. I just came back from London for various reasons, did a little bit of sightseeing, and while in London, I started thinking, man, people are sort of watching my YouTube channel, at least, a few people are. So let's get some photos of things that I can start using to populate my videos. So we hit up the British Museum, took a whole bunch of fabulous photos that I hope you guys will start seeing. Some cool archaeology, stuff that people see, stuff that people don't see. Try to give some different perspectives. I have some videos on Egypt coming up, hence why we prioritized the Egyptian gallery. And one point in the future, I will try to tackle stone vases, since I know there's like a lot of interest on the internet about that topic. And then, of course, pets and mummies and stuff like that are totally fab. I also got a chance to hit up the London Mithraeum. And so, is this a video? I think you can still continue. Okay, cool. So we hit up the London Mithraeum, and that was cool. I'm thinking in the future at some point, everybody likes archaeological mysteries, but nobody knows what real archaeological mysteries are. So at some point, I want to do a video series on real archaeological mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries, the Mithraeus mysteries, the Bacchic mysteries, to try to look at what the real mysteries are that archaeologists look at, because most of what people think is mysterious actually is not too mysterious. Yes, John, we need fundraising to get me better internet. If YouTube somehow pays for it, then I can get better internet. I make jack shit as an educator. Let's just put that in a technical way. I make jack shit. So, I've spent the money that I got as tips from Joe Rogan on this new Lavalier mic right here, and it cost a fuck ton of my money. And so I'm glad that the audio is working. If I play a video, I'm not going to play a video right now, Kyle. But it's a good point. I need to get better with these live streams. But okay, so future video series on mysteries. I think everybody will like that. I am now no longer with Cardiff University. As of like 3 or 4 days ago, my contract ended. However, good news, I will soon be employed by Cardiff University again to be teaching next year. And I hope that some of my teaching can inform some of my YouTube content. It kills two birds in one stone. The two modules that I'm in charge of are specifically explanations and interpretations in archaeology. And then a class on zooarchaeology. How can we sort of study ancient animal bones? And so these are two topics that I think we're going to hear a lot about in the future on this channel. I'll try to make my teaching content and my public engagement content work together, because that's a lot less work for me. Because let's be honest, YouTubing is a lot of friggin' work. It's more work than it seems. So in terms of explanations and interpretations of archaeology, that's actually the very first class that I'll be teaching here at Cardiff. And what that is it's kind of the history of archaeology. It's how do we actually answer questions from archaeological evidence, right? How do we actually interpret it? And so, oh good, everything's working with the video. And this is something that I find that people really don't understand very well when I talk to people on the internet about archaeology. They don't really understand how we go from like an artifact or a monument to an explanation. They sort of think that, I got into an argument on Twitter yesterday where people were saying archaeologists just speculate. And that is a bunch of BS. We do not just speculate. We actually have a whole body of theory through which we interpret patterns in the archaeological record. And so in that sense, I'm going to be looking into that. Yeah, okay. That's coming across. My PowerPoint's coming across. And then the second class that I'll be teaching is zooarchaeology. I need some volume. Okay, let's see what I can get with volume. I'm going to try to turn this up. See, I'm trying to figure this stuff out, guys. This is like new technology to me. Nice to have you here from Ireland. And so zooarchaeology, that'll be fun. I'm going to have access to the zooarchaeology lab. I'll be teaching students, and I think I've cleared it where I can do content creation using real animal bones and things like that, so I can show you guys how archaeologists study ancient animal remains. Get a sense of sort of food production, hunting, how people herded animals, how they feast, how they butcher, all this kind of fun stuff. That's actually the core of my own research. So it's going to be a lot of fun to try to show you guys how we actually interpret ancient animals. Yes, I agree, Zach. Zooarchaeology is just phenomenal. You go from broken up bits of animal trash to, like, saying things about what people did, their economy, their ritual, their community that gathers together. And then I'll be lecturing on a lot of various different topics, and so I'll be sure to share stuff on that as well. I do want to, before I talk about some of the future videos coming out, I want to give a promo specifically to the last 2 videos that came out. I had a nice video on the ancient Olympics, the top 3 Olympians of the ancient world, the GOATs, as we could call them, the greatest Olympians of ancient times. Be sure to check that out. I actually think that one was fantastic, but at the same time, nobody really saw it. So go watch that video. It's really friggin' cool stuff. If you guys are interested in ancient sports, I'd like to do more videos on that. I once taught a whole semester-long class at the University of Cincinnati on ancient sports, but if people don't watch that content, I won't make it. So, vote with your eyes. Go watch it if you want me to do it. So let's see, some chat here. Hard disagree. I think science is about the methods of how to best speculate and test the results. Science is about hypothesis testing. Science is about making a hypothesis, coming up with a way to test it, and then answer that kind of question. And so part of archaeology is science. In fact, I'm an archaeological scientist. I specifically do hardcore science. I do isotope analysis. I apply biology to the archaeological record. However, yes, apply to Cardiff University. It's pretty lovely here. Great archaeology department. I'm in it. But at the same time, not all of archaeology is science. And so this is the kind of topics that I'll get into in that explanations and interpretations class. But also, I just released a video on Homo naledi, specifically some of the critique into burial, and I have a feeling I'll be doing more Homo naledi videos in the future as there's more active news on that. And I've been very engaged with with colleagues who are critiquing the results that Lee Berger and his team have published, and so I think it's important. It's also a really great case study in how we approach archaeology in a scientific way and how we sort of create explanations and interpretations from the archaeological record that we have. Yeah, but that's not quite true. It's not just speculation. Developing a hypothesis is not just speculation. If you actually think that, you're not doing real science, because developing a hypothesis takes a ton of research in the first place. You go from inductive approaches to answering questions about the past to deductive by testing those kind of hypotheses. And you also need to work to develop hypotheses that are actually testable. You can develop any hypothesis you want that the evidence doesn't answer clearly. And so part of the goal, and one of the goals I have when teaching students, is to explain that you have to develop hypotheses that actually relate to our evidence. Otherwise, it is just speculation. I do agree with that. Let's see, so some more chats, good. If you're not doing science, you're not doing archaeology. Carl, I love you. I think you do a great job, but I'm not sure if I fully agree with that. There's all kinds of archaeology that's not strictly science. You could be doing art history. You could be doing historical analysis. There's different ways of doing archaeology. However, at its core, I do think most field archaeology and most quantitative archaeology is certainly scientific. So let's see. So those are my last 2 videos. What's coming up? So I'm actually having surgery tomorrow. That's part of the reason why I am doing this live stream today, to get one out of the way. I'm going to be removing this giant friggin' carcinoma that's under my eye. So I'm going to have like this nasty scar for like a month, which sucks. I'm going on a really big podcast in a few weeks, and so I'm gonna have to deal with that. quick, Black Hole Sun has tipped me $2 Australian. Thank you, Black Hole Sun, for the super chat. Underwater archaeology. Have you seen my interview with Dr. Jessica Cook-Hale? It's all about underwater archaeology from the Stone Age. I highly recommend checking it out. But yes, underwater archaeology is a budding frontier for archaeology as a whole. There's underwater archaeology going on around the globe, and it's something that I want to do more on. I feel like people don't understand just how much has been done. And again, the kind of questions we can answer from it. I showed that sort of image of shipwrecks in the Mediterranean from Oxford University's database. I'll talk about that again in the future and how it relates to what we can say about lost civilizations, for example, underwater and stuff like that, because I think it's true. Yeah, John, I'm going to have to wear a pirate eye patch at some point. Yeah, I think Atlantis might be on the moon. I think that's going to be true. So I have this stupid surgery come up. So all these interviews on here are already all recorded. So the next one that's going to come out will be with Dr. Lee Clare, who is the field director for the German Archaeological Institute at Göbekli Tepe. We dove into what's going on at the site right now to get a sense of sort of really cutting edge research. And I'm really excited. I'm hopeful that in the next week to 10 days to release this video on Göbekli Tepe. It's going to be really good. Get the cutting edge. It's just going to be, what's going on today, the kind of stuff that you don't hear about because it takes 5 years for it to be published, right? So we're going to look at that and sort of what the team is doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, how are they applying 21st century cutting edge methods to exploring the site of Göbekli Tepe. I've also interviewed Dr. Jennifer Raff on the topic of archaeogenetics and the peopling of the Americas. And so I'm really excited for that one. I think it's going to get a lot of interest, and I think we're going to get the cutting edge. And in particular, it summarizes a lot of what she published in her book Origins and a Genetic History of America. I highly recommend everybody go and read that book. I've also interviewed Dr. Beth Hart, someone who I've known for actually most of my career. I've excavated with her at 2 different sites, and she is an expert on pre-dynastic Egypt and an Old Kingdom Egypt. And so we have a video coming out that's going to be about from Hierakonpolis to Giza, looking at the development of tombs in Egypt all the way up to the Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau, so we can understand that kind of development. I find that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and so she was very, very kind to agree to an interview. In fact, it was her idea. She's great. Like I said, an old friend of mine, to try to inform people what they don't really know about the development towards these really large structures, these monuments, these fantastic, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, for example. How did people get from point A to point B over 1,000 years of tomb building? And so we dive into Hierakonpolis, we dive into Abydos, we look at Saqqara. That's going to be a really, really cool one. I think that everybody will enjoy. I've also interviewed Dr. Brad Lepper. That one I might be putting on hold for a little bit because I'm thinking about getting in touch with some other people to talk about Serpent Mound to make it sort of more interactive so we get some different interpretations of it, including an indigenous perspective is one of my goals there, to try to give an archaeological and an indigenous perspective side by side on the site of Serpent Mound in Ohio so that we can get some real good information on it, why it matters, the kind of ways that archaeologists collaborate with different indigenous peoples. And then I have an interview finished with Jo Hedwig Theois, who you might know as Fake History Hunter on Twitter. She has a new book out on fake history, and so it's really phenomenal. She highlights some fantastic examples of fake history and the kind of stuff. Me reading this book, I was surprised. I'm a historian and an archaeologist, and I believe in some fake historical myths. It really was a bummer for me to be like, man, really? Napoleon had nothing to do with the nose of the Sphinx? No, I grew up learning that in like middle school or something like that, and it just kind of stuck with me, right? Because I didn't really bother to research it. And so it should be really cool to hear from her about that kind of stuff. So all those interviews are all recorded, and then I have this video on Plato's Atlantis that I've been working on for over a year. In fact, in many ways, it was the genesis for this YouTube channel starting. Our goal has been to create this really high quality video on Plato's Atlantis, specifically the interpretation that we get from Plato. What does Plato say? He is the OG source on Atlantis. What does he say? What does his body of material have to say about what we can think about with Atlantis? And of course, it's also exactly what I'm going to be writing a book on. I now have a literary agent, and I'll be writing a book on Atlantis and sort of what's an archaeological historical approach. I really think it's going to be the first book on Atlantis in a generation written by an actual archaeologist, and so I'm very excited about that. So that's kind of like the next month or so of content, maybe 6 weeks of content for this channel. But I wanted to get a sense of kind of, one more thing. So in September, I am going to be organizing an online archaeology carnival. And the goal is it's going to be a big event. We're going to try to get every single YouTuber and podcaster, TikToker, everybody that we can get that does archaeology content online, digital blogger. Carl, I saw you're there. I hope you'll be involved to get everybody that does real archaeology content. Sorry, I'm organizing this. I get to decide what's real archaeology content. Sorry, that's just how it's going to be. I am an archaeologist after all, and I'm organizing it with other archaeologists. Dr. Bill Farley is helping organize it, as are a few other people. And so it's going to be a large event. The idea is to have 30, 40 different content creators. We're going to pick a weekend, mid to late September, and we're all going to release content at the same time to try to build up the ecosystem that is real archaeology. I feel like this is very important when you look at social media, when you look at YouTube, when you look at TikTok. It's dominated by people who are sometimes, pseudo-archaeologists, and I use that term in a real way. They are not promoting the content that real archaeologists are creating. Yes, Carl, we want you. And so we're going to be putting this together, and I expect it to be phenomenal, and I hope that what it leads to is a series of collaborations between creators that are creating phenomenal content on YouTube. And yes, we have some of the top archaeology channels already lined up for this. All your favorites should be there, I believe. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, exactly. And so that's the goal in mid to late September. I think it'll probably be more late September, so we have time to pull this all together. We're going to get it all in. If anybody is interested in helping sort of organize, there's going to be a lot of effort that goes involved. We want to create a website as a sort of clearinghouse for this. We want to make sure that everything is, run smoothly, not like this live stream, which did not start very smoothly, right? We want to get this to work well. And so that's kind of the goal here. And so anybody that's interested in helping out, ping me on Twitter or some other social media, ping me on here as a comment or something like that. We're interested in anybody who wants to help create content, anybody who wants to help out with organization and stuff like this and promotion so that this goes smoothly. Yes, we did talk a bit about Karahan Tepe. We can talk about speculation a bit later. I'm going to keep moving forward. All right. I'm also starting to think through some new ideas for this channel. I wanted to branch out. This channel is becoming fun to do. My partner, Yoni, my wife, she has been helping with the video editing and with imagery. She's very into graphic design. And so I think it would be good if we start branching out into what people are interested in seeing. One question for everybody here. We have, 57 of us? That's pretty cool. Archeo gaming. Would people be interested in some archeo gaming? Maybe play like a game of Civ 6 where it's a real life sort of creation of the Roman Empire type thing, and at the same time as I play, I share the real archaeology and history of the areas that we go as I recreate the Roman Empire. Or maybe there's some really great games that were created on Old Kingdom Egypt and pre-dynastic Egypt that were created by talking with archaeologists to design them and to kind of think through, hey, what if I play this and then I sort of, while playing it, I break out of the game and I show a few images and make some points about the archaeology and history of that kind of stuff? Would people be interested in archeo gaming is one of the questions that I have. If you are, please leave a comment either in the live chat or afterwards below. What about archaeology news? Are people interested in sort of like reading through the news of the week, something like that? Maybe that's what I do my live streams on. Oh, people are interested in the archeo gaming. Good. Keep giving me pluses or minuses on Archeo Gaming, and maybe the news of the week. I pick out things that I'm reading, new publications, stuff like that, and I share them and why they're significant. They might not always be the publications that are making the big headlines, but they're significant publications for what's going on. If people are interested in that kind of thing, maybe that's what I should be doing. That could be fairly easy to do. So tell me, maybe we could even create a little reading group around like an article a week or something like that that people will be interested in doing, and we chat about it. People, there's this lag between this that's kind of funny. So yeah, I agree. Okay, archaeology news too. People like. Of course, I'm going to include some stuff on my research. Okay, so news is getting a lot of yeses. So I'm going to start experimenting with some of these new ideas and new ways to do it. Some of it is, how do I create content that doesn't take up too much time for me? You know, video editing is a very time-intensive job. Graphic design, old news with Flint Dibble. That's a good one, Mandy. I like that. Old news with, I got to write that down. 1 second, everybody. I got to write that down. Old news with Flint Dibble. It's going to cause all this lag. Let me do this on my phone. God, yeah, see, this is why I need you guys. Give me a super chat. Give me a super thanks. I got to get a new computer. I got to get a better internet. If we're going to make this YouTubing work, we got to do that, right? Old news with Flint Dibble. I like it. That's a catchy little title. Where are we at? Doing bits and pieces of like prehistory guy meant, but I don't know any broader overview of reading group. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, maybe a reading group. I was thinking, how do I get members and patrons excited about this? Maybe come up with some sort of reading group for members of the channel and patrons. If people like that idea, tell me, because I'd be happy to do that. That would probably have to be with a smaller group, members, patrons. What we do is we think about an open access article each week, maybe each month, because some of them take some time to get through and digest. And everybody loves this idea with old news. Oh, book and movie reviews are not a bad idea either. I like that idea. Everything except debunks. Yeah. So debunks. So I'm going to be doing some traveling. I'll be in Italy in September. I'm getting in touch with some archaeologists I know at Pompeii. And thank you, John. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be going to Pompeii, or not Pompeii. I'm going to Naples for a wedding. And so I was thinking, try to go to Pompeii and talk to some archaeologists there. I also excavated at Pompeii back in the day when I was a student, and so I know the site very well, and I know lots of people that work there. I have a lot of friends that work there, and so I was thinking about a mini-series on Pompeii at some point, because I think that would be really, really cool to do. And so I just sort of, it's tough to do the travel thing. That's something where I would need more funds for sure in advance, and like a good commitment to that. But I think it's something that I could at least start with this Pompeii trip or Naples trip, and then try to work in later on. All right, so reading group is, people who are my members are saying that reading group is on board. Let's do a reading group. I think that's a good idea. Let me also write that down. I think that's a phenomenal idea. Reading group. Yeah, I'm hoping to do some stuff around Gladiator. I'm going to be on a podcast about the new Gladiator that comes out. There's friends of mine that do, oh man, what the heck is it called? 1 second, let me Google it. Let me give a quick shout out to my friends who have an awesome podcast that I'm going to be on soon. Movies We Dig. It's run by archaeologists, and it's about archaeologists in the movies. And I will be on there in December about Gladiator. So I was thinking to, thank you, Rajiv. I really do appreciate it. Seriously. And John and as well. So yeah, I think doing some stuff on movies is good too. A Q&A video specifically for Patreon. So part of my issue, I think I will do something like that. I need to figure out how to merge my patrons on Patreon with my members who are on YouTube. It's two different systems, and they're sort of done a little differently. So I need to think through how to do that. It could be really nice to be able to merge those two. I don't have many yet. So more, sign up for membership or Patreon. I'm releasing teaching videos that I've done behind there. I'm going to start releasing more sort of posts on my research and preprints of all my publications so that everybody can see that kind of stuff for those people. Four Lost Cities by Annalee. Yes, Annalee is awesome. They are absolutely phenomenal. And so I'd love to interview Annalee Newitz. I think that's a great idea. To do an interview with her. For books, I was actually thinking of doing interviews mostly with the scholars that write these books or authors that write these books. I think it's a great way to promote their books and to give them the chance to speak up about what they've written about and for people to get to know the authors. So that's one of my big goals with interviews, is to try to interview people that have published really good archaeology and history books. So these are all really good ideas. All right, this is great. I like you guys. You guys are phenomenal, coming up with good ideas here. So this is some of the directions that I'll be experimenting with over the next, let's say, 3 to 4 months. For those that have just joined, these are my list of upcoming videos that I've already recorded before I go under, and I have a giant scar here on my face. And then I'm also organizing an online archaeology carnival in September or late September. We'll hear more about that soon. And then let's start with some questions. Some Q&A is how we'll end this chat. So let's see. John Apple asked me, because he was a member, I asked my members first if they had any questions, and he was the only one that gave me a question. And I feel bad, it's a question that I don't have an answer to. And so I want to be clear. I've seen some pseudo-archaeologists do live Q&As. Dan the Dedunker. And he was on Jimmy Corsetti's channel, and he was asked about Baalbek and Phoenician architecture, and he just made up some bullshit. And I will never do that. I will always say I don't know. Just like when we talked about the fertilization of plants on Joe Rogan, I started off by saying maybe it takes a few thousand years because it takes a few thousand years for domestication. And then I quickly said, actually, you know what? I don't know the answer to that question. Despite the fact that Dan the Dedunker has made a video critiquing me for that and clipping that out of context and saying that I lied, despite the fact that he clips out the part where I say, actually, I don't know the answer to this question. But whatever, I will always try to say I really don't know, because I don't know everything. Archaeology is a giant field. As I always tell people and students and the public, archaeology is so interdisciplinary that every single method of study it engages with it, whether it's the humanities and literature and art and history, or whether it's the social sciences like economics and political science, or whether it's the sciences like, biology and chemistry and physics, astronomy. They all interact with archaeology, and so it's just not possible to unlisted works. That is a good idea. Thanks, Dean. And so it's not possible for any archaeologist to know everything. And at the same time, archaeology, it is the one thing archaeology does that no other field of study does is it goes into deep human, the depths of the human past. So we are talking millions of years of human evolution all the way down to yesterday, all the way down to 5 minutes ago. That's archaeology. And in fact, there's even the archaeology of the future. And it's all over the world. And at this point, archaeology is not just on the planet Earth. A friend of mine just published an article on archaeology on the moon. Justin Holcomb, I don't know if you'll see this, but shout out to you. A really cool article. I know other people that are doing archaeology of the International Space Station. And so, archaeology is so big. Let's get me a cough drop. Thanks, Ola. Yeah, get me a cough drop. Archaeology is so big that it's just really not possible. Yeah, we'll talk about Naledi and Berger in a second. It's just not possible to really know everything. Nobody can, and anybody that claims they can is a total bullshit artist, okay? And so I will always try to say I don't know, just like I said to John, I don't know. So John, what I can do, if you want to get in touch with somebody I know who might be able to, I think she's even on Twitter, though I don't think she checks her Twitter very often, Teresa Ratchek. Let me put her name in here. Teresa Ratchek. She is a scholar of of early India. And she's somebody that I would approach to ask a question like that. I can try to ask that question to her, perhaps. I haven't interacted with her in a while, but I knew her. She was one of my dad's former students, and she's lovely. She's absolutely fantastic. And so that's somebody who you might be able to ask. Beyond that, we don't have anybody that specializes on the archaeology. Oh, there's a postdoc. There's a new postdoc here at Cardiff that specializes on the archaeology of India. And I can maybe ask her when I next see her in the department. She just got here. She has a great Marie Curie project where she's studying historical India, but she might be able to answer this question on prehistoric India because she is really, really, really cool. Okay, let's now move. Since John was the only one who took up the question in advance, I will spend a little bit of time answering a few questions here. So, Home and a Lady and Burger. I think it actually is a really important thing to discuss. I think it's an example of issues with public communication in archaeology, and it's something that I really care a lot about, partly just due to my dad. If you ever saw my first video on Home and a Lady, my dad was one of the key scholars who approached the topic of burial with hominids, and so it's something therefore that I feel near and dear to, and I know a lot about through my dad. And so I heard through Science Magazine, I guess, they did an opinion piece covering the news of the recent article that was my last video with Kim Fakey, Jesus Christ, with Dr. Kim Fakey. Sorry, Kim. So I have a feeling I'll do more Naledi content. They're going to maybe release their final version of the paper in eLife, and so I'll be really intrigued. I've already talked with one of the peer reviewers at eLife, Jamie Hodgkins, and maybe I'll have her back on the channel, and we'll do like a live discussion on it or a recorded discussion on it to see what we think as a public peer review of the final version, because I think it's a really important topic and a good one. It's something that's really well known because the team there is really good at public engagement, and I give them a lot of credit. Like those scholars are really good scholars. I really don't understand why they screwed up here. I've invited Lee Berger on this channel. I'll try to invite him again. He declined, or he didn't respond. He ghosted me. But I'll try. So let's see, what else? The brain. How long has it been this way? That's a good question. I don't really have a good answer to that. I know people I could ask, but not right now. Hey, PC, thanks. Yeah, I'm a PC. The moon archaeologists might find Moon Atlantis. It's possible. Let's see, where are we? Same thing with science. Yes, I agree, Santa Cruz. Cylon, I definitely, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate it. Just an update on my cancer. It is gone right now. I have a CT scan upcoming, but right now I've been done with the chemotherapy for like, what, 3 months. I got off of it about a few weeks before going on Joe Rogan to talk with Graham Hancock. I delayed it due to the cancer stuff. Yeah, I'd like to talk, so thank you. I really appreciate it. My health is my biggest priority too. It's one of the reasons why I'm sticking around Cardiff, is to keep the same team. I'm only working part-time for them next year. I love the department, but maybe I'll be working full-time in the future. We'll see. They like me, but you know, the field is tough to find a permanent job, and that's just life. I would like to get in touch with David Wengro. It would be really nice, and maybe he'd be interested. We've chatted a bit about Graham Hancock and other things, so maybe I could. Cerberus, I don't know a ton. Let's see, is there an update on the museum in Wales? No, I've been wanting to do some in-person work with the team at the museum in Wales, and I have a lot of friends that work there, right? And they're really interested to talk with me, but their communications director is not letting them. I'm not sure if I should be saying this publicly or not. They don't want to buck I think they're trying to really I don't know the details. This is me speculating now. This is speculation. I think they're trying to more formally influence politicians in the Senate here in Wales, and they don't want to create a media brouhaha, is what I gather reading between the lines. I still plan on creating content with some of my friends who work at the Museum in Wales, but it will not be about the lack of funding that they have. It will instead be about the great work that they're doing, because there's such phenomenal work that my colleagues there are doing. And so I'm hoping to go there in person and do some filming, do some behind the scenes stuff on their collections and how they work with locals and things like that to understand better the process at a great museum like the Archaeology Museum of Wales. So I do expect more content from there, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to publicize what's going on with the situation there. They certainly need funds, though. I do know that the building is a real problem, and that's part of the issues here, is that there needs to be a new reinvestment into the building itself. So funds are desperately needed for the museum, the Archaeology Museum of Wales. So please do contribute. If someone could Google where to donate for them, please drop it in the live chat. The seeds. No, the issue with fertilization is we'd see that still in the DNA, right? And I think I mentioned this on Rogan. If I didn't, I've mentioned it on Twitter since then. When you domesticate crops, whether it's plants or animals, there's a bottleneck in the genetics of it, because only a certain small segment of the population of the wild plants ends up domesticated. And that bottlenecking should show up in the genome of these plants or animals. And so we would know that there was a domestication event because we'd see a genetic bottleneck event going on. And that's why there's no evidence earlier on. As I also brought up on Joe Rogan, there's not the right climate during the Ice Age for domestication. There's not enough CO2 in the air, it's too cold, it's too dry, etc. Yes, megasites in Ukraine would be cool. Would I consider the rovers on Mars to be archaeologists? No, because archaeology only studies humanity. So if they're studying, even if there's other life on Mars, it's still not archaeology, right? It's a geological approach. If there's other life, then it's a paleontological approach. But the traces that rovers leave on Mars, that is archaeology. So there is now archaeology on Mars. What we'd be studying is the impacts that humans have had on Mars itself. Let's see. If arid conditions are... Yes, actually, so Zach, that's a great question. It's arid conditions and waterlogged conditions. Those two are really good for the preservation of organic material. However, the change between dry and wet, dry and wet, dry and wet in temperate climates is not very good for the preservation of organic material. So spot on, it's sort of waterlogged material is preserved because it's anaerobic atmosphere. Let's see, I'm missing some questions. Oh, PC was the name. I guess. Thank you for the health wishes. Good. Donate to the museum. I hope it won't close. Any thoughts on on the Graeber and Wengrow's Dawn and Everything? I think it's a really fascinating book. I think there's a lot of room for thought there. However, I think there's also lots of issues with it. That would take like a whole video. Basically, I think that what they're doing is they're challenging this paradigm where we look at hierarchy. And I think that challenging the paradigm where you look at hierarchy is great, but they're trying to replace it with a new paradigm. And I don't think there's room for a paradigm. I think that that's actually the problem that Graham Hancock rightfully attacks and other people rightfully attack when they say that there's this picture of human history that you guys think of that you probably learned in middle school. Our research today tells us that actually the reality of human history and prehistory is much more complex and nuanced. There's not some linear progression from hunter-gatherers to agriculture to urbanism to advanced technology like we have today. In fact, things go much differently than that. There's movements in all kinds of directions all over the world. And to be honest, I don't think Wengrow and Graeber did a great job of addressing that. They were instead trying to replace a paradigm with another paradigm, when in fact the paradigm that exists today is nothing so dogmatic. I think Carl Lipo's work on Rapa Nui is phenomenal. Let's see. The Black Sea for yes, there's all sorts of Stone Age archaeology in the Black Sea. All sorts of shipwrecks. There's been all sorts of great underwater archaeology there. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with stuff. Some people believe humans domesticated ourselves. Yeah, that comes actually out of Ian Hodder. I think he was the first person to suggest that. There's some interesting thoughts there, actually. I'm not a giant fan of the idea, but I think there's some ways. It's like this idea that Wengrow and Graeber came up with. It's good to think with. It's an idea that's good to think with. How does decisions that humans make, meaning like with urbanism or changes in diet, how does that actually impact human evolution? In a sense, we domesticate ourselves. And so there's a lot of cool stuff there to think about. The difference why it's not domestication is because domestication, well, actually, that's not true. Never mind, forget what I was going to say. I was going to say domestication is an actually intentional decision, and actually that's not true. It is today, but the very earliest domesticates, like I actually presented on Joe Rogan, is not like that. Thank you so much, Carl Fegans, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I hope I've not missed any super chats here. No, I don't think I have. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, the news on the construction of Djoser Pyramid using hydraulics to lift large stones. It just came out. I haven't read it closely, so I don't have any real great thoughts on it. But I think that I think there's some issues with it, let's say. But I need to read it closely before I go on that. I think that it's a plausible idea, but I don't think there's any evidence for it, if that makes sense. And I think if Egyptologists look at it closely, they probably find evidence against it based on where the Nile is and how the channels of the Nile are going. The permafrost in Russia, yes, I think that that's really interesting. Evan Michael, yes, thank you for your question and the super thanks. Are you familiar with Bradley Alt or Heidi Dierks? Yes, I know Heidi Dierks. She's a friend of mine. I've not worked with her on the same project, but we were living in the same town on Crete. She does fantastic work on groundstone and stone tools in the Bronze Age world. And Brad Alt is just phenomenal. He does amazing work on households in the ancient Greek world. I cite his work in my own research, and he does really, really good work. So I hope that everybody goes and reads them, and maybe I should do some interviews with them if people are interested. Yes, keep reading Wenger and Graeber. It's great to see that people are reading archaeology. That's what I want to see. Argue that dogs domesticated humans. Yeah, this is actually an interesting idea that's also really good to think with, where the idea is that domesticated plants and animals actually, they're the ones that trained humans to spread them all over the world, right? You think about it, every single species that humans have domesticated has expanded and proliferated around the world, and they've convinced us to care for them and to keep propagating them. That's a really trendy idea over the last like 15, 20 years, just like the humans domesticate themselves. And it's a really cool idea to think with as well. I really think it is interesting. Let's see, some more questions. Goats are great, but what about horse history? Yeah, so I'm very interested in horses. I actually organized an exhibit that was in Athens in the museum there on Athenian horses. I have a publication on Athenian horses, and I've studied horses from around the Greek world. And so I think they're extremely important to understand. And I know I collaborate with people that work on very early domestication of horses. I'm waiting on one of my colleagues, Taylor Hermes, to get out some of his publications on the genetics of ancient horses, and then I want to have him on the channel. So there'll be more on that soon. We'll do an interview on that. Let's see, we have some more chats on Wenger and Graeber. Is it safe to assume cave art was a small part of prehistoric art, but that is the bulk of what has survived long enough for us to discover it? It's a good question. We do obviously have lots of other examples of early art in the form of figurines or in the form of sort of incisions on sort of shells and on other things. I think that prehistoric art, the cave art, is the stuff that gets a lot of attention. But if you go read, I think probably more numerous are smaller, less newsworthy type of things, doodads or symbols or whatever that we don't always understand very well, that are probably far more numerous. It's something that I actually don't know a ton about, but something that I should do some research on to do some stuff for this channel on. Is my fridge running? Yes. No, I've not watched the Rogan interviews with Terrence Howard. It's not something that I know much about. Let me see. Where's the question? Oh, what are my thoughts on the uses of pseudoarchaeology in fiction? I have no issues with the uses of pseudoarchaeology in fiction. I actually find it very interesting. I read a lot of fiction that uses pseudoarchaeology. When we see one video I'd like to do when we see the Rings of Power Season 2 come out is talk about the influence of the pseudoarchaeology of Atlantis on J.R.R. Tolkien and Numenor and Gondor and Arnor. So what's really funny is Tolkien, he was a philologist and he was a historian. historian. He knew his mythology. He read his Plato. But what influenced his storytelling was not Plato's Atlantis, it was Ignatius Donnelly's Atlantis. And so that's something I hope to write on and do some videos on, and I'll be writing on that for my book on Atlantis. So this is a really good question. I think there's no issues with using pseudo-archaeology in fiction. However, like any fiction, I think you need to be careful about the ethical messages that you're getting across, right? I think that Tolkien, for example, he's writing in a different era, but his emphasis on genealogies and his emphasis on bloodlines, that promotes some very sinister ideas in today's world that we understand are problems. So yeah, I think there's some issues there with that. But I think using pseudo-archaeology is not a problem. I don't know what you're asking, T, about chickens. Woolly mammoth coming back through dormant DNA. I'd like to interview somebody on that. I don't have strong opinions one way or the other. It's not really a mammoth, by the way. It's mammoth Y chromosome in the egg of an elephant, I think. So it's a little different. Yes, cats have definitely domesticated people. No, tobacco is not in ancient mummies. This is modern contamination. It's been fairly well proven at this point. A brawl between human. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible, Carl. I'm not sure what the batons are talking about. The Horse, the Wheel, and the Language by David Anthony. No, I've never read that. Yes, there's a whole bunch of influence between Southwest Asia and the Greek world, both in the Bronze Age and in the early Iron Age. So there's a whole lot of influence there. I think that that's something that we can talk about in the future. I'd love to have on somebody that does ancient DNA, or some of the people I know who do a lot of trade. I'm close friends with some people that work on that topic, so it's something we could work on. I've sort of been avoiding doing Greek archaeology on my channel to try to branch it out and give it some breadth. But that, of course, is my bread and butter, so expect that to be a steady trickle on my channel. Let's see. No, I'm not going to watch the Eric Weinstein one. They were doing an imitation of me. So what else? I think we're winding down here. Anybody else have any really good questions to address before I leave? Let me see. Am I missing some in the chat? My chat just went away. Why did my chat just go away? Oh, there we go. PIE culture is Proto-Indo-European culture. It's not a very good term. We move away from that now because Proto-Indo-European is actually a language group, not a group of people. It's a type of language that other languages developed out of, and it was developed from understanding the history of these different languages and what they all branch back to. And that's Proto-Indo-European, that's PIE. But there is no culture to them. That's an old idea that does not exist today in archaeology. It's been gone for decades. All right, I think we are running down to the end. I'm hoping to do something on granite vases later on. That'll take some time, though, because it's the kind of topic that needs to be done really, really well. I do not in any way agree with what Ben or Uncharted X says about that, and there's lots of good archaeological evidence about it, but I want to talk to experts, the actual experts who study stone vessels from ancient Egypt, not just debunk it myself. So look, I am one of the experts on the topic of Atlantis and different iterations on that, so I'm very comfortable discussing that even as a big topic. That's why I went on Joe Rogan. I am certainly one of the leading experts on that kind of topic at this point in time. However, on stone vessels, I'm not, so I want to make sure that we talk to real experts. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to double thank everybody for super chats and super thanks. And we're going to do some more of this. I'll try to work out a way to do this regularly about news. Maybe even try to do it once a week once my surgery heals, just to talk about what I'm reading and what I think is cool. Maybe a couple things that made big news. And then I think for patrons and channel members, I really like the idea of doing a kind of reading group. Maybe we meet once a week and we discuss a reading reading that I choose. I'll make sure to choose open access readings that are available for free to everybody, and then we can kind of do that together. I think that would be a really cool idea. So Old News with Flint Dibble, a reading group. If anybody else has any ideas, if you're watching this after the live thing about how to get this channel going, how to get my membership up and patrons, I'd like to do more. Look, I know people all over the world that do archaeology. I'd really like to give a behind the scenes look for people to what archaeologists today do. That is the goal of this channel, to try to sort of say, I mean, like my friends and colleagues, I have a lot of experience doing archaeology and I've done a lot of different things, and I want to give this kind of behind the scenes perspective. Not many people take archaeology at the university level, and so people don't really know what we're doing today in the 21st century. And so I want to sort of that peek behind the curtain. What are we doing? That's the goal of this channel. And if we can build this channel up to the point where I can really start showing what are the questions we're trying to answer today, not the kind of stuff that you see in the news, not the kind of stuff that you see on YouTube, the kind of stuff that's really, really awesome that what we're really, really doing. You know, not the kind of jazz that gets a headline writer excited, the kind of stuff that gets archaeologists excited, explained in a way that everybody can understand. That's the goal of this channel, is to try to say what we're doing in a way that everybody can understand and get a sense of, because that's my goal. So thank you all for showing up. And yes, I will be doing a collaboration with Milo. I'm actually collaborating with him on a few things. So that will happen. And I've been chatting with like Stefan, Milo, and other people about doing some collaborations to try to boost things. So that's the goal. It's just it takes time. And, you know, as you saw, I have like 6 videos I'm working on. So thank you all.